Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we are embarking on a microscopic safari. We're going to explore the vast, invisible world of organisms, diving deep into the biodiversity and classification of life that exists entirely outside our natural line of sight. We're going to scale up from the simplest biological hijackers all the way to highly complex multicellular networks. It's a wildly fascinating journey, so let's jump right in. So, what's actually teeming in that unseen environment covering literally every inch of our planet? I mean, when we say the word biodiversity, our minds usually jump straight to lions or elephants or towering redwood trees. But there is a massive biological universe right under our noses, on our skin, and in the water we drink. All right, let's get our baseline definition straight. Microorganisms are tiny, invisible entities that are just way too small to be seen with the naked eye. And they are incredibly diverse. Some are single-celled or unicellular, while others are multicellular. Their impact is all over the map, too. Some are incredibly helpful, like the yeast we use to bake bread, while others are harmful pathogens that cause devastating diseases. Here's the game plan for today's safari. We're splitting this expedition into 4 groups. Viruses, the acellular hijackers. Bacteria, the ubiquitous survivors. Protista, the aquatic wildcards. And finally, fungi, the eukaryotic decomposers. We'll be steadily climbing the ladder of biological complexity as we go.
Okay, group number 1, viruses, the acellular hijackers.
When you break down the anatomy of a typical virus, you'll find a protein capsid. That's essentially a protective shell for its internal genetic payload, which can be either DNA or RNA. Wrap that up in a phospholipid envelope covered in spike projections, and you've got a virus. Those spikes are absolutely crucial because they act like tiny lockpicks, letting the virus latch onto a host cell. And then there's the bacteriophage. The word phage means to eat, and a bacteriophage is a very alien-looking virus built specifically to infect, you guessed it, bacteria. But honestly, the wildest thing about viruses is what they aren't. They are completely acellular. They don't have cytoplasm. They don't have membrane-bound organelles. Because of this, they can't actually do anything on their own. If a virus can't find a host cell to hijack, it just goes completely dormant. It's like a tiny biological zombie existing strictly on the boundary between the living and the non-living. Moving right along to Section 2, Bacteria, the ubiquitous survivors. To really get bacteria, which belong to the kingdom Monera, you have to know that they are totally unicellular and, crucially, prokaryotic. That just means their genetic material isn't neatly packed inside a defined nuclear membrane. It just kind of floats freely in an irregularly shaped region called a nucleoid. And when we call them ubiquitous, we mean it. They are absolutely everywhere. We usually categorize these tough little survivors by their shapes. You've got your perfect spheres, called a coccus, and then you've got your pill-shaped, rod-like ones, known as a bacillus. Nature loves throwing a curveball, though, so they can also take on this wavy spiral shape called spirillum. Or they might look like a tiny, slightly curved comma, which we call a vibrio. And despite these really simple shapes, these guys do it all. They can be autotrophic and make their own food, or heterotrophic. Some cause diseases like tuberculosis, while others form absolutely vital mutualistic relationships. So how exactly do these simple prokaryotic cells manage to absolutely dominate the planet? The secret to their survival is a ridiculously efficient, lightning-fast reproductive process called binary fission. It goes like this. A single parent bacterium duplicates its core genetic material, the cell membrane pinches inward, and boom, it splits right down the middle. 2 distinct, identical cells. It's so incredibly straightforward. And it's exactly why bacterial populations can colonize an environment at terrifying breakneck speeds. All right, Section 3 on our ladder of complexity, Protista, the aquatic wild cards. Stepping up from the Monera kingdom, we hit a wonderfully diverse group of mainly unicellular organisms found primarily in water. There are 2 main groups here. First, phytoplankton. These are the plant-like autotrophs, packed with chlorophyll, photosynthesizing their own food. Then you have the zooplankton. These are animal-like, and they're free-living in the water, acting a bit like tiny microscopic hunters. These aquatic wildcards are incredibly adaptable. Some are sessile, meaning they're permanently stuck to a surface, while others just float along. For the ones that do move, they've evolved amazing little biological motors. Some use whip-like filaments called flagella, and others literally use pseudopodia, which translates to false feet, to drag themselves around. Plus, unlike bacteria, they have the ability to pull off both sexual and asexual reproduction. Finally, Section 4, the eukaryotic decomposers, fungi. So unlike the bacteria we looked at earlier, fungi are eukaryotic, and that's a massive evolutionary leap. Eukaryotic organisms actually have their genetic material locked safely away inside a beautifully defined euclear membrane. It's just a much more organized, complex cellular setup for this family, which includes molds, yeasts, mildews, rusts, and even the mushrooms in your garden. Fungi are fascinating because they're entirely heterotrophic. They have zero chlorophyll, meaning they can't make their own food. Instead, they act as nature's ultimate recycling crew. They've got cell walls made of a tough material called chitin, and their bodies, especially the multicellular ones, are built from these tiny threads called hyphae. Those threads weave together into a massive network called a mycelium. They feed either as saprophytes, living off dead organic matter, or as parasites, living right off of a living host. And that brings us to our conclusion, the invisible web of life. Let's zoom back out for a second and connect all these groups, viruses, bacteria, protista, and fungi, to our everyday macroscopic world. The sheer scale of their impact is just mind-blowing. They're the backbone of traditional technologies, literally the reason we can produce beer, wine, and cheese. They're vital in medicine, giving us life-saving antibiotics and insulin. In nature, they form incredible symbiotic relationships, like the nitrogen-fixing bacteria in plants, or the E. coli living inside our own intestines. Yes, they cause diseases that require vaccines and immune responses, but ultimately, they are the glue maintaining the entire balance of the environment. Which leaves us with a pretty intense thought to ponder today. Considering their immense power to sustain life through medicine and recycling and threaten it through disease, what would happen if all these invisible forces just vanished tomorrow? Honestly, the biological machinery of our planet would completely grind to a halt. It turns out the things we cannot even see are the very things running the world. Thanks for tuning into this explainer, and keep exploring the unseen.